Hey guys, welcome back. I got a real short one here for you on diagnostics that I thought was interesting and I'd share with you. This obviously is the VFR 750. Okay, so the first thing I did was a couple days ago, I replaced the OEM fuel pump with a quantum fuel pump. The OEM fuel pump was unreliable in my opinion, and I wanted to kind of harden the fuel system, so I had this quantum, which was highly recommended for the VFR by the first gen RC24 guys on Facebook. So I had this on the shelf here and it was going, install me, install me. So what I did was I said, okay, finally I gave into it and I went ahead and installed it. Now this looks a little different because the quantum doesn't have the curved ends to it, because this normally faces this way, but that's not an issue with this. All I did was make a little bracket to level it out and now I have a nice straight shot and everything fits. This is not the issue I'm going to talk about here. The issue I'm going to talk about is essentially timing. I don't mean ignition timing. I mean the timing as to when things are done. So I put this fuel pump in and got it running, and it started dropping the cylinder. And so I'm like, what the hell? Then it would come back, and I go, okay, well, then maybe the fuel was low in the tank, but it's got a fuel pump. As long as the fuel is immersed, or the pickups are immersed in fuel, it should pull it. And indeed, I looked down the tank, and in the reserve one was well below the lowest level, although the fuel light was starting to come on. So I said, I don't know, maybe this thing just doesn't like it when the fuel is low. So I put some fuel in it, and it seemed to be better. So that was a couple of days ago. So I tried it yesterday, and indeed, it just stopped running on a cylinder. It was only running on 3. And I could tell that just the way it was running. The idle was low, and it just did not have any ass. So my first assumption was, when I put this quantum fuel pump on, what I normally do is I flush these out. This is the inlet on this particular model where it comes in from the tank. It has a filter on that side, and this is the outlet. Normally I would just have an open hose and run this fuel through it just to make sure there's no garbage in there, and I didn't do it. I just didn't think of it. So I took the little caps off the end, stick it in, and used it. So I'm thinking to myself, I bet you there is some junk from manufacturing inside the fuel pump, and it got pushed up into the carbs. But I'm pretty sure those carbs have the small little filters at the float jet inlets, but I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember. So the only thing I could think of doing at that point, because I convinced myself diagnostically that there was a problem in those carbs, I pulled the tank, I pulled the carb rack, I drained the carb rack, flip it over, take off all the float bowls, and they are perfectly clean. I mean, there isn't a speck, not a speck of junk in there. Took the slow jets out, took the mains out, took a look at them, blew them out. Nothing wrong with it. Put them all back together, put the carbs back in. Ran this side, which is the inlet to the carbs, from an auxiliary fuel source, okay, in my can that I hang. And it did the same thing, not running on one cylinder. So I'm like, what in the hell is going on? So I happened to be standing on that side of the bike while I had it running. And I just had a suspicion, for some reason, I don't know, my gut feeling was telling me that it was number 4. And so what I did was I took the coil wire, which is the ground wire here, off the coil and pulled it while it was idling, and there was no change. So in other words, if it was idling properly, as soon as you pulled one of the coils out of the loop, as far as disconnecting the power of the ground, it should go, and it didn't do that. So I said, it's number 4. So I said, I wonder if the coil went bad. So at that point, I got to get in here to get the spark plug wire to test this. So I have to dislodge the radiator here, get it out of the way, essentially swing it back, get in there, cut up my hand on the fins, pull the spark plug wire. I brought the spark plug wire out to here. Now I have the original 4 plugs that came with this. These are 4 brand new plugs that I put in here. And I hooked one of those older plugs up and put it to a ground and cranked the motor real quick, and a good spark. So I know it's not this. So what does it got to be? A freaking spark plug that went bad. You got to be shitting me. So I take the spark plug out. I put the one I just used to test it to verify the coil was good in. But I don't hook it up yet. I hooked the one that came out that I suspect was bad up to the coil. Hook that up to a ground. Fire the bike up. 0. No spark. So I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Put the spark plug wire back on, fire it up, boom, perfect. So I'm just telling you this story because certain things when you're doing diagnostics can take you down the wrong road. If I had not put a new fuel pump in just before these symptoms started, I would have never figured it was fuel. I would have gone immediately to ignition. I would have said there's got to be something dropping out, like a coil or a bad spark plug, because I have had bad NGK spark plugs out of the boxes. Not many. It does happen, you know, every now and then. And personally, I think the reason why these plugs go bad is that R right there. This is a resistor plug. All these modern plugs are resistor plugs. And I think the resistor goes bad and it opens up or otherwise goes so far to parameters that it won't allow the electrical impulse to go through. That gap is not terribly bad. That's a stock gap, and I'm pretty sure that's about right. So that's my theory, at least, that the R in these go bad because of the resistors taking a shit. So timing is everything. You have to think about what are the situations that led up to the issue and what have you done just prior to that that leads up to the issues, because normally those changes are directly related to the issues, because, you know, it makes sense. You know, if you put a battery in that some guy gave you and he says it's good and now it won't start, but it did before with the other battery you had in it, then obviously it's the battery, right? Well, it's the same thing with a fuel pump or anything else. You put a new fuel pump in, but you don't flush it like you normally do to make sure that there's no contaminants or no products of manufacturing or debris in it, and you hook it right up and you start pumping fuel and it doesn't want to run on a cylinder, the assumption has to be at that point that you have something in the carbs. But in this case, no. So I went through all that work for nothing to change a spark plug and get it running again. So I went a roundabout way to do diagnostics. So this is just a lesson for y'all that things are not always what they seem, even if you just did change something and then a condition occurs as a result, or you think as a result of that, it very well may not be that result. So yeah, learning experience. So that's just a short for today. So I hope you got something out of it. Consider subscribing, ring the bell, like the video, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.